So in case you missed it, I decided to punish the producers for incentivizing their cast on The Real Housewives of New Jersey to dig up dirt about each other worse and worse each season, and throw it at each other and turn fans against fans and all this, really toxic manipulation. And so I invited Gabriella, who ran an account whose job was to, help some of the characters from Real Housewives of New Jersey create horrifically toxic storylines against each other to help production and also help Teresa and her camp. But they all are guilty of it in one way or another. So I decided I didn't want to make it about any particular cast member because it's the climate of the show that causes this. And I decided the way to punish the production company was to tell everybody every big moment and spoiler with Gabriella for season 14, the entire season. I mean, the finale, everything. And we also went ahead and we dropped the storyline for Teresa for season 15. We also said every single piece of gossip that Teresa was trying to get out about her castmates. So now it's all out there. Here's the list of some of the stuff discussed, if you want to pause and look at it. And there was a whole plot that involved Kim D. So I'm going to play some of the allegations that Kim D was being used by Teresa Giudice that came from her own text messages and her attorney's text messages. I'm going to actually have Kim D on a live listen to it all and respond real time to you guys because so many of you were worried about her. I was like, let's just have her listen to it together and see what she thinks. So we're going to do that. And I got 2 phone calls about stuff to do with Real Housewives of New Jersey. And that is going to be episode 182 and 183. We might as well go big or go home. More shocking things came out. I mean, so shocking that I'm doing a whole show on one. I mean, you're going to be blown away. It has to do with Namaste, bitches. Yep. But there's more. There's more. So next 2 weeks, wow, it's going to be a whopper. So if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button because you don't want to miss this Kim D live and you don't want to miss any of the stuff coming up on here. It's going to be pretty damn good if I do say so myself. All right. And get in the Patreon. There's a lot of people in there. We have a lot of fun. All right. Like, subscribe, and let's get going. So many of you guys wanted me to cover this yesterday, but I was feeling under the weather, unfortunately. So I'm going to be coming out with my video at the same time as the LA Times. It's going to have to do. Anyway, Paul Vernon and Bethenny Frankel break up after 6 years. And a bunch of you guys wanted to know what I thought the reason of it was about. So I do have some different takes, and I thought it would be fun for us to take a look at some gossip, and then I would tell you what I think is really going on, and I think it's going to surprise you. Now, one thing to note, Bethenny Frankel has had kind of a crappy love life, honestly. She was in a divorce for 10 years with this lunatic. There he is on the right, Jason Hoppy. I mean, he stalked her and was mean to her and all this stuff, alleged. And Bethenny, got one really good thing out of all that, and it was her daughter. And hopefully they co-parent okay. Because the Lord knows that guy did not exit that relationship normal. Then remember this guy, Michael Cerruti, or Mac? He definitely was a player. Never could get this guy to calm down, for sure. You can just tell he was a player. I just know it. I know her problem with him is he just would not settle down. Okay, that's this guy. And then there was her good friend, Dennis Shields, who she was engaged to but never would marry, never planned on marrying him, although he wanted to marry her. And he ended up dying of an opioid overdose. They also had an amazing friendship. They were friends for 30 years, besides the engagement. Now, in order to understand what the hell happened in this relationship, you have to know a little bit about Bethenny Frankel. So let me tell you a little bit about her. But before I do, let me tell you about Paul's ex. So here's Ashley Bernin. This is Paul Bernon's ex-wife. Now, Ashley Bernin is like a chief marketing officer for a big real estate law firm in Boston. She spends a lot of her time in Bristol. And she's a very beautiful lady, and she did the whole entertainment circuit with her husband, Paul. There he is. Paul and her were together for 14 years before they got divorced. And they were primarily Boston-based. I think Paul is from Boston, although I couldn't totally establish that. He's a masshole like me. Well, sort of. A masshole like me. But anyway, so she ends up marrying another venture capitalist who's a big real estate mogul. And his name is Kyle Miller. He has 2 kids. She has 2 kids. And they end up having this like lavish ceremony. He's really wealthy. So she's from New Orleans. This is her with her new husband, Kyle. And just knowing my socialite friends from New Orleans, I'm going to say that she probably came from a well-to-do family. And, you know, she went from one venture capitalist to another venture capitalist. And this guy is a VC-oriented property venture capitalist. So anyway, I'll leave that for you to contemplate. Supposedly, even though they had 2 children together, she never really cared to meet Bethenny Frankel. She never watched the show, and they didn't interact much, if at all. So here was some interesting gossip about Bethenny's background. I don't know if it's true or not, because Bethenny's early years are a little bit hazy. This fan said, asked to be sent away to rich kids' boarding school at 14 years old. I believe in Georgia, the same one Shep from Southern Charm went to, due to lack of stability in the home. Now, I saw no record of this. Doesn't necessarily mean that she didn't spend a stint at this school, because she did supposedly go to a few schools because she was struggling. She ended up graduating from Pinecrest in Fort Lauderdale. And then she did go off to NYU. I don't know if she ever married a guy. This gossip says that Bethenny married a guy for 7 months, like 23 years old, and it was a quick divorce. They don't really acknowledge that in her formal biography, but it could be true, I suppose. Her stepdad was estranged for a while. Her mom was 19 years old when she had Bethenny, and we know that Bethenny struggled with her relationship. She respected that her mom did her best, but she kind of implies her best wasn't that great. And then the fan goes on, I think even though Bethenny has some peripheral money access to upper class circles, which she does, she didn't have any good parenting and kind of raised herself. I would say that's accurate. Cooking was a hobby and went to culinary school. I think was runner-up on Martha Stewart Apprentice. Yes. And the end is true. Bethenny met Kyle Richards while she was working for a restaurant. She ends up becoming Nikki Hilton and Paris Hilton's nanny. And Bethenny is like a party girl trying to be an actress in Hollywood for a while. It's a thing. I only met Bethenny Frankel once. It was in a restaurant in LA. I forget who I was with. They knew Bethenny. She said hi to them. She slightly acknowledged me. She didn't try to talk to me, even though my friend was talking to her. I'm like, who was it? Was it Brandi Glanville or Kyle Richards? I can't remember. It was somebody from Real Housewives of Beverly Hills I was with at the time. This was a long time ago. This would have been 2011 probably. She probably thought her shit didn't stink if I was to say what I really felt. It's possible because Bethenny Ever After was going on at this time, and she was really at her peak as a reality star in 2011. She had the highest rated spin-off series ever on Bravo's show circuit. I think it was over 2.3 million people watching the show, Bethenny Ever After. And I think Beverly Hills season 2 was the second highest, and that was, I think, 2.2 million or something like that viewers. Thank you very much. It's not quantity, it's quality. I'm just kidding. I found this gossip story, which leads me to think that maybe Bethenny at a certain point in time needed to derive some of her self-esteem from men, and maybe over the years she's worked hard to not have that be the case. So this girl randomly posts this, Bagel with Locks, on Reddit. Here's some tea about Bethany since I never see anyone on here talk about her. My dad used to work with her and was married to my mother with a newborn and me, like 5 at the time. And she tried to start an affair with my dad. He obviously turned her down and told my mom, she's not a good person. Now, there could be absolutely no truth to that story, but there could be truth to the story, so let's just consider it. Such is the way in the crowd gossip landscape. Now, here's some more tea being dropped by this fan, which is all true. She did work as Jerry Bruckheimer's assistant. I wonder if that was the dad that she tried to sleep with. Could be. Her mom did marry a horse trainer. I guess her mom did have an eating disorder. I think Bethany Frankel, it was alleged by a few people, might have also a disorder like her mom. Also, there was like issues with drinking in her house as well, I heard through, her formal biographies. And she did start a pashmina company in LA. You'd have to be in LA at the time, but pashminas were the it thing, and you couldn't buy enough of them, and there was like a shortage of pashminas at one point. It's like a fashion scarf you wear over your shoulders. And it's really funny that she sold pashminas. That makes a lot of sense to me for the time period. Anyway, it does make sense that she would date a lot coming up in Los Angeles because, let's face it, part of the clout of the women there is how rich or powerful or hot their men are that they can get. And if you can get a hotter guy, it means you're a good girl. And so the women think a little different there. They collect men like trophies and vice versa, unfortunately. But it can kind of toxify the way you think of things. So it's possible Bethany got set off on the wrong trajectory from the very beginning, maybe in the process of trying to better herself, until she saw her big break be realized on The Real Housewives of New York. And although people think that she's the most successful housewife of all time, if you look at some of the details of what she went through, which I have done, because I've read a lot of legal papers related to Skinny Girl Margarita, you can go in the Patreon and read them yourselves. Here you go. This is from the Patreon. 2011 legal complaint allegations, Skinny Girl Margarita. It was a difficult road for her. It wasn't as simple as they made it sound. From a branding perspective, she makes it sound like she went in and she was brilliant and she made this big company. It was a lot of work, and then she sold it for hundreds of millions, and there was no hiccups, and she moved on and found herself and, sitting on the couch at Shark Tank. But that isn't really what went down. That's just a bullshit story that, like anything, like a legend or whatever. It was a lot more complicated than that. But anyway, I know she definitely gets a lot of her self-esteem from you guys. She gets self-esteem from, doing a good job in her life with her work. She loves to build businesses. That's obvious. She's very smart. You can tell from the way that she communicates. She tries to be a philanthropist. Some people complain about her philanthropy, but I'm like, geez, give a gal a break. If she wants to raise, a few $100,000 for something, don't piss on it. It's more than most people do. But there was a whole social media war about Be Strong. People complained about some of that a lot online, did a whole expose. Then there was the Stodden drama that happened between Bethany Frankel and her. Then there was her outing some of her cast members doing cocaine. Some of her cast members think she's a real bitch, I've heard. They've DM'd me that information. So, it just depends on who you are, I think, in Bethany's life, right? As to how she's going to treat you and whether she respects you or not. So then there was lots of gossip that also came out that she was struggling to sell some of her tickets in Australia for her shows, not because people didn't want to go, because they were so expensive. And then some people were given free tickets and other people had to pay for their tickets, and they were sat next to each other, and it pissed people off. I'll play a video.
So Bethany, we're just at your show and something's come to my attention. I'm sitting here next to these two lovely ladies. Ladies, say hi. Well, I'm making a video to Bethany. It's going to be on TikTok.
Okay.
Anyway, Bethany, I think there's a lot of influencers here that haven't paid for their tickets at your show. And these lovely ladies paid for their tickets and had to afterpay them to come to your show tonight. Now, I'm a bit sad about that because I know you are the #1 frugal queen, okay? And there are a lot of people here that I know that have Birkins, multiple, that haven't paid for their tickets. And these lovely ladies here have afterpaid their ticket. So, with no Birkins, I paid for my ticket too. Could have got free tickets. I paid. Me and Mum, we paid for our tickets to come to your show. So, VIP. I don't know. We've got to sort something out here, Bethany.
So her mom dies, her business might be struggling, she may be having a bit of an identity crisis at the moment after the reality reckoning, and so all of this would make for maybe breakup material. The truth is that she has her kid. I don't think she wants more kids. He has his 2 kids. He didn't want any more kids. He gave her the engagement ring and was willing to make the commitment. They had a lot of fun together. They traveled together. She lived mostly in Boston with him and commuted back and forth between her house in New York and Boston. And, you know, they went on trips together and all this stuff. And I just think, you know, after 6 years, it sort of played its course. I don't think she ever intended on marrying him. I don't think she really likes the idea of marriage after Hoppy and her opioid overdose, you know, ex that she really cared a lot about. I think she's, you know, wants to be with a man on very specific terms, and when it doesn't meet those terms, she's out. And I'd say that, you know, over time that happens with any man, really. You know, like at a certain point, if you're not willing to, you know, adjust, it's going to end, right? So I think that's it. But, you know, whatever makes her happy is the thing. Could make her happy every 6 years breaking up with a guy, you know, to each their own. But I thought it would surprise you that I think it's her that ends the relationships, not the other way around.